Hello, I'm Eli, and I'm doing a video about the Renaissance, and my title is Renaissance Church History. Renaissance style places emphasis on symmetry, proportion, geometry, and regularity of parts as they are demonstrated in the architecture of classical antiquity, and in particular ancient Roman architecture, of which many examples remain. Orderly arrangement of columns, pilasters, and lintels, as well as the use of semicircular arches, hemispherical domes, niches, and aedicles replace the more complex proportional systems and irregular profiles of medieval building. Italian architects had always preferred forms that were clearly defined and structural members that would express their purpose. Many Tuscan Romanesque buildings demonstrate these characteristics, as seen in Florence Baptistry and Pisa Cathedral. Italy had never fully adopted the Gothic style of architecture apart from the Cathedral of Milan, influenced by French Rayonnant Gothic. Few Italian churches show the emphasis on vertically the clustered shafts, ornate tracery, and complex ribbed vaulting that characterize Gothic in other parts of Europe. The presence, particularly in Rome, the ancient architectural remains showing the ordered classical style provided an inspiration to artists at a time when philosophy was also turning towards the classical. The obvious distinguishing features of classical Roman architecture was adopted by Renaissance architects. However, the forms and purposes of buildings had changed over time as it had the structure of cities. Among the earliest buildings of reborn classicism were churches of a type that the Romans had never constructed. Neither were the models for the type of large city dwellings required by wealthy merchants of the 15th century. Conversely, there was no call for enormous sporting fixtures and public bathhouses such as the Romans had built. The ancient orders were analyzed and reconstructed to serve new purposes. The plans of the Renaissance buildings have a square symmetrical appearance in which proportions are usually based on a module. Within a church, the module is often the width of an aisle. The need to integrate and the design of the plan with the facade was introduced as an issue in the work of Filippo Brunelleschi, but he was never able to carry this aspect of his work into fruition. The first building to demonstrate this was St. Andrea in Mantua by Alberti. The development of the plan in secular architecture was to take place in 16th century and culminated with the work of Palladio. Church facades are generally surmounted by a pediment and organized by a system of pilasters, arches, and entablatures. The columns and windows show a progression towards the center. One of the first true Renaissance facades was the Cathedral of Pisa, which has been attributed to the Florentine architect Bernardo Gomberetti, known as Rossellino, with Alberti perhaps having some responsibility in its design as well. Domestic buildings are often surmounted by a cornice. There is a regular repetition of openings on each floor, and the centrally placed door is marked by a feature such as a balcony or rusticated surround. An early and much copied prototype was the facade for the Palazzo Roccanali, 14 in Florence, with its 3 registers of pilasters. These Roman orders of columns are used: Tuscan, Doric, Ionic, Corinthian, and composite. The orders can either be structural, supporting an arcade, or architrave, or purely decorative, set against a wall in the form of pilasters. During the Renaissance, architects aimed to use columns, pilasters, and entablatures as an integrated system. One of the first buildings to use pilasters as an integrated system was in the old sacristy by Brunelleschi. Arches are often used in arcades supported on piers or columns with capitals. There may be a section of entablature between the capital and the springing of the arch. Alberti was one of the first to use the arch on a monumental scale at the St. Andrea in Mantua. Church vaults do not have ribs. They are semicircular or segmental and on a square plane, unlike the Gothic vault which is frequently rectangular. The barrel vault is returned to our architectural vocabulary as the St. Andrew in Mantua. The dome is used frequently both as a very large structural feature that is visible from the exterior and also as a means of roofing smaller spaces where there are only visible internally. After the success of the dome in Brunelleschi's design from the Basilica di Santa Maria del Fiore and its use in Bramante's plan for St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, the dome became an indispensable element in church architecture and later even for secular architecture, such as Palladio Villa Rotonda. Church roofs are fitted with a flat or coffered ceilings. They are not left open as in medieval architecture. They are frequently painted or decorated. Church doors usually have square lintels. They may be set within an arch or surmounted by a triangular or segmental pediment. Openings that do not have doors are usually arched and frequently have large or decorative keystones. Church windows may be paired and set within a semicircular arch. They may have square lintels and triangular or segmental pediments, which are often used alternately. Emblematic in this respect in the Palazzo Fornes in Rome began in 1517. In the Mannerist period, the Palladian arch was employed, using a motif of high semicircle topped opening flanked with two lower square topped openings. Windows are used to bring light into the building and in domestic architecture to give views. Stained glass, although sometimes present, is not a feature. External walls are generally constructed of brick, rendered or faced with stone and highly finished ashlar masonry, laid in straight courses. The corners of buildings are often emphasized by rusticated coins. Basements and ground floors were often rusticated, as at the Palazzo Medici Riccardi. In Florence, internal walls are smoothly plastered and surfaced with lime wash. For more formal spaces, internal surfaces are decorated with frescoes. Courses, moldings, and all decorative details are carved with great precision. Studying, mastering the details of ancient Romans was one of the important aspects of Renaissance theory. In the different orders, each requirement different sets of details. Some architects were stricter in their use of classical details than others, but there was also a good deal of innovation in solving problems, especially at corners. Moldings stand out around the doors and windows rather than being recessed, as in the Gothic architecture. Sculptured figures may be set in niches or placed on plinths. They are not integral to the building as in medieval architecture. During the Renaissance, architecture became not only a question of practice but also a matter for theoretical discussion. Printing played a large role in the dissemination of ideas. The first treatise on architecture was De Re Edificatoria, English on the Art of Building, by Leon Battista Alberti in 1450. It was to some degree dependent on Vitruvius de Architectura, a manuscript of which was discovered in 1414 in a library in Switzerland. Dira Adiactivoctia in 1485 became the first printed book on architecture. Through humanism, civic pride and the promotion of civil peace and order were seen as the mark of citizenship. This led to the building of structures such as Brunelleschi's Hospital of the Innocents, with its elegant colonnade forming a link between the charitable building in the public square and the Laurentian Library, where the collection of books established by the Medici family could be consulted by scholars. Some major ecclesiastical building works were also commissioned, not by the church, but by guilds representing the wealth and power of the city. Brunelleschi's dome at Florence Cathedral more than any other building, belonged to the populace because the construction of each of the height segments was achieved by a different sector of the city. In the 15th century, Florence, Venice, and Naples extended their power through much of the area that surrounded them, making the movement of artists possible. This enabled Florence to have significant artistic influence in Milan and through Milan, France. In 1377, the return of the Pope from Avignon Papacy and the establishment of Papal court in Rome brought wealth and importance to the city, as well as renewal in the importance of the Pope in Italy, which was further strengthened by the Council of Constance in 1417. Successive popes, especially Julius II, 1503 to 13, sought to extend the Pope's temporal power throughout Italy. The return of the Pope Gregory IX from Avignon in September 1377 and the resultant new emphasis on Rome as the center of Christian spirituality brought about a boom in the building of churches in Rome, such as had not taken place for nearly 1,000 years. This commercial commenced in the mid-15th century and gained momentum in the 16th century, reaching its peaks in the Baroque period. The construction of the Sistine Chapel was, with its unlikely important decorations and the entire rebuilding of St. Peter's, one of Christendom's most significant churches, were part of this process. In wealthy Republican Florence, the impetus for church building was more civic than spiritual. The unfinished state of the enormous cathedral dedicated to the Blessed Virgin Mary did no honor to the city under her patronage. However, as the technology and finance were found to complete it, the rising dome did credit not only to the Blessed Virgin Mary, its architect and the church, but also the Signoria, the guilds, and the sectors of the city from which the manpower to construct it was drawn. The dome inspired further religious works in Florence, the development of printed books, the rediscovery of ancient writings, the expanding of political and trade contacts, and the exploration of the world all increased knowledge and the desire for education. The reading of philosophies that were not based on Christian theology led to the development of humanism, through which it was clear that while God had established and maintained order in the universe, it was the role of man to establish and maintain order in society. Historians often divide the Renaissance in Italy into three phases. Whereas art historians might talk of an early Renaissance period, in which they include developments in the 14th century painting and sculpture, this is usually not the case in architectural history. The bleak economic conditions of the late 14th century did not produce buildings that are considered to be part of the Renaissance. As a result, the word Renaissance among architectural historians usually applies to the period 1400 to ca. 1525, or later in the case of non-Italian Renaissances. Historians often use the following designation: Renaissance ca. 1400 to 1500, also known as the Quattrocento, and sometimes early Renaissance. High Renaissance ca. 1500 1525, Mannerism ca. 1520 1600.